Hey, Duane, what's the best defensive handgun?
That's a great question. I'm sure you're all wondering too, so stay tuned to find out. I'm Duane Urban, and welcome to the Urban Defense Podcast, featuring discussion on firearms, concealed carry, self-defense, the law, and much more. Designed to inform, educate, increase your survival in a critical incident. And in this episode, we'll be talking about carry handgun choice, the good, the bad, and the ugly. You won't want to miss this. So, Andrew, best defensive handgun, 1911, right?
I prefer a Derringer 22.
All of my Derringer 22 lovers out there, come at us. Come at us in the comments. I challenge you.
I prefer a High Point.
Trusty, reliable, a value brand.
I mean, it's got value.
Yeah, when my life is on the line, I want the lowest cost option.
That's like the Davis 380 from the 80s.
If the gun
right?
fails, you throw it at them.
Nothing like a good Taurus either. I love a good Brazilian firearm when, my life is on the line.
They were shit cars and they're shit handguns.
BBH, big Brazilian handgun.
They have a strong track record of success in conflicts around the world.
From Uganda to North Avenue.
Yeah. Communism would have been stopped if not for the High Point.
Yeah.
All right. So, all joking aside, let's talk about concealed carry handgun choice. And it is an important choice. And there's tons of options out there. And there's options out there that are very expensive. There's options that are less expensive that we were kind of just joking around about. And although there is no one perfect defensive handgun, any defensive handgun that you're going to choose for this type of work should have certain attributes. It should be well made and reliable, so it should be made from a reputable manufacturer. It should be reasonably accurate.
Well, let's talk about that, Duane. You've got that, for those of us watching the video, there is a Kimber 45 on the table there, and I'm sure, a 1911 platform, that's well made, Duane.
It is well made, and we're going to get into why maybe that isn't the best choice in a second, but it does meet the criteria for being well made, and it is very expensive.
And there is a German Luger there that fought in the Eastern Front on World War II.
Also in the same realm, and I'm going to kind of explain why they were and why they aren't anymore. Reasonably accurate, so both of those meet the well made and reliable at the time. Both are more than reasonably accurate, right? And when we talk about reasonable accuracy, we're not talking about a competition gun. You don't need a handgun that can shoot a little tiny bug hole at 50 yards or 100 yards. You need a handgun that is capable of consistently putting rounds in rapid succession in that high center mass area, that 5 or 6 inch circle in that high center mass. That's what you need. In addition to that, the gun has to be simple. It has to be both simple internally and simple externally, meaning that it doesn't have lots of superfluous levers and buttons and gadgets and gizmos on it. And inside, it cannot be mechanically so complex as to cause it to become unreliable. And now we kind of start getting into those problems a little bit with the ones on the table. But the other two main bits, it needs to be functional by the operator, which means it doesn't matter how expensive it was or how cool it looks or what all the guys on AR15.com say about it. It has to be functional by you.
I dare say the most important quality.
It needs to be in an appropriate defensive caliber.
So all you 380 fans, come at us.
Yeah, I mean, let's call it what it is. The data suggests that there is little to no discernible difference between the wound tracks of the 9mm, the 40, and the 45. Now, with that said, I want to say, and then we'll get back to these two. With that said, if I was to shoot someone once in the chest, a bad guy once in the chest, with a AR-15 pistol in 5.56 or a Mini Draco in 7.62-39 or a 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum, they are likely to have more effect than a single round of 9mm. But I'm not likely to be carrying one of those guns, nor should I be.
Speak for yourself.
Well, I mean, but we should be comparing apples to apples and not apples to bowling balls here. Let's make sure that our expectations are reasonable. So that person that's going to be carrying that and I can assure you, someone in Maryland right now is carrying a AR pistol or a mini Draco.
We have the phrase, I got a chopper in the car.
There
Yes.
you go.
Wasn't that in a rap song?
Apparently so.
That's what G Money carries.
And for those of you who don't know, a chopper is an AK.
Is that what it is?
That's what a
Used,
chopper
used to be a Thompson submachine gun back in
it's
the
a-
day.
A chopper is an AK-47.
I don't think they were rapping about choppas back when the Thompson submachine gun was popular.
Oh, they were rapping all right. So, but look, the common handgun calibers that you're going to be carrying, 940 and 45, there's going to be little to no discernible difference in the wound track. 22 and 380 and 25 and 32 and those are going to be underpowered, and they're going to put you at a disadvantage. So going back to the Luger and the 1911 on the table that you pointed out, at the time the Luger came out, it was like the iPhone. Which one are we on now? 16?
16 is coming out. Yeah.
That was like the iPhone 16 when it came out. It was like cherished technology. Like everybody wanted to have this thing, right? But there's a reason why there's nobody. I'm going to say there's a reason why nobody should be carrying a Luger as a concealed carry pistol right now, although I am certain someone in this state is carrying one.
100%.
However, there are better options. The 1911. The 1911
Won 2 world wars, Duane.
That's what they keep saying to me. So although the two are contemporaries of each other mostly, the 1911 did come out after the Luger. And the 1911, arguably, I think is a better gun than the Luger for a number of different reasons. But there are still better options out there today. There are guns that are lighter. There are guns that are more simple. There are guns that are more modular, which means that they can accept different things that we can add to them that can help us out. And there are guns that carry more rounds, and there are guns that are lighter.
2 world wars.
My 1911 guys, come at us in the comments. Andrew will answer.
Well, I mean, it's honestly, that's not it's a pretty widespread thing and common thing. It's kind of like that gun was the Porsche of its time, and some people get stuck on that, and they're like, this is the best thing ever. So like right now you could pull up a 1,000 horsepower turbo race car, and some guy's gonna say, I'd rather have my 68 Nova with a carburetor on it.
Yeah.
It is so true. And
No,
they're going to
it's-
say it's solid steel, unlike your plastic guns.
I
And-
get it.
Yeah.
I get it. I mean, it's even like even a lot of the old school guys that I play paintball with, like they're all from the semi-automatic mechanical days. And like, we'll still to this day, if we go to the field, they're like, are you guys shooting those machine guns? Because like they're all electronic guns now. And they're like, we're shooting mechanical.
People have this nostalgia for these guns, and that's not to say that they're junk. So please don't misread what I'm saying to you. I own both of these guns that are on the table here today, and I'm not going to get rid of them anytime soon. But I don't carry either one of them. Again, I want a gun that is going to be lightweight, small, high capacity, simple, and very reliable. And unfortunately for those two, unfortunately for them, but fortunately for the rest of us, there are better options out there today. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about. And it's going to lead us down a whole bunch of different paths because there's a lot of really good stuff out there. Some that's really well known from, H&K and Glock and Smith & Wesson. And then some companies that maybe people haven't heard of, like Canic makes handguns. I had a chance to shoot some of them. I don't carry one, but it shot really well.
Is it Canic? I hear they pronounce it Janek.
Well, I don't know, but I call it
Everybody
Canic.
I've ever heard, I've heard it pronounced Canic.
I have heard that if you go to Turkey, and once again, come at us in the comments, I have heard in Turkey, they're going to pronounce it Janek. I don't know. Only one way to find
Is that
out.
kind of like gyro and euro?
You've got it. So time for us to go to Constantinople, and let's get to the bottom of this.
Yeah, but what I think what Duane is trying to say about these weapons is they're not bad weapons. They're just old weapons, and they're antiquated. It's antiquated technology, and they have come and evolved so much further with technology and gunsmithing that they come out with lighter weapons,
Made of plastic, though.
polymer, whatever. But regardless, it's still a more usable, functioning weapon that's going to perform better. It's lighter. It holds more rounds. and it's probably more accurate.
Yeah, I think that argument could be made. And look, I mean,
Some guys at the VFW are crying now listening to this.
Well, I'll buy them their next round.
well, I agree. I agree. I think that we have to be practical here, and let's be smart. Let's be reasonable about this choice. And 20 years from now, there may be some other type of firearm that's out there from a different, now unknown, maybe doesn't exist, manufacturer doesn't exist today, that eclipses all of these things. But we have to be smart enough to evolve as when things change, and we have to be smart enough to evolve with that change.
When I was growing up, and I'm a contemporary of you gentlemen, everything had a hammer on it. And now, who would want a hammer on their firearm as opposed to a striker fired?
So perfect example, the Luger is a striker fired gun. The predecessor to the Luger, the Borchardt pistol, the C93 Luger the C93 Borchardt, which was developed in 1893. Believe it or not, semi-automatic handguns came out in the late 1800s. The Borchardt got the moniker of being the first commercially successful semi-automatic. Maybe that's so. I think they made and sold like 3,200 of them, and it took them like 15 years to sell all of them. So was it a commercial success? I don't know. Certainly wasn't the first semi-automatic. The Salvatore Dormus and the Bergman pistols were before the Borchardt. So we go from striker fired to what replaced the Luger, the P38. Now we have a hammer. And now everybody wanted to have a hammer. And now where have we gone? Completely full circle. We're back to striker fired. And there's a lot to be said for striker fired.
My Bren 10 looks so much sexier because it's got a hammer.
I mean, when you look at the difference with a hammered
Do you
weapon,
have a Bren 10, really?
Yeah.
Do you really?
Yeah.
That is a very collectible tactical gun. That was the first really good gun to be chambered in 10 millimeter.
I want to be like Don Johnson.
So there you go.
But here's
You're halfway there.
Here's what's funny is the people that I see that do actually carry 1911s. Like I've been to gun shops or shooting ranges where, of course, there's an old timer behind the counter, and they were wearing a 1911 in their holster. But what's even funnier is they keep the hammer cocked back in the holster.
Well, they have to, and do you know why? Because the gun is designed to be carried what's called cocked and locked. There is no mechanism to draw the hammer back on most 1911s, so that gun has the hammer back, round in the chamber, safety on. And
See, I'm a 1911 idiot. Like I know the basis of the gun, but I don't know the functionality of it.
Yeah. So, and that's another, and I'm glad you brought that up because that's another, in my mind, detractor to the 1911, which is a very accurate gun, but you have to carry it in such a way that maybe you wouldn't really want to.
Wait till you have to try to disassemble it to clean it.
Oh God, everybody. So in the comments, haters, but the 1911 disassembling that and then putting it back together can be like a descent into madness. It really and compared to our modern semi-automatic handguns, those are much simpler to take apart. So I'll tell you what. Let's do this. Let's talk about what each of our carry guns are and why, and then we can kind of go into more detail into some other stuff.
Start
Andrew,
with G Money.
G Money.
He's got the same one.
Okay.
He's
What
got
is-
multiples though. So my only firearm, my first and only so far, is the Glock 43X.
Ah.
And the difference between a 43X and a 43 is the length of the handle. So with the 43X, it's slightly longer, a little bit heavier, so you can fit both hands around.
And you both have the same?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I just had to buy a different color because
Did you get pink?
yeah, I got the
Tiffany
Tiffany blue.
Blue. Oh.
It's funny you say that because actually
collector's
I saw a security guard working outside of a grocery store the other night, and he was a man, and he was carrying a Tiffany blue gun. And I don't know if it was his girlfriend.
It's
or what,
unisex.
but
It's unisex.
I pointed it out to her. I said, "Did you see that?" She's like, "What?" I said, "That guy's carrying a Tiffany blue gun in his holster."
It's not his fault he has fashion
And,
sense.
But anyway, so yeah, because we have the same holster and the same gun, I was like, there's no way I'm going to accidentally grab hers one day off of the kitchen counter, and that'll be the day I have to use it. And they're like, we're taking this weapon. They're like, oh, one small problem, Mr. Noto. This gun comes back to someone else. And you're sitting there like,
Well,
oh,
we
shit.
could have gotten different colored holsters or something, but they were all
yeah.
out of the black one. So I have a
Yes.
black one. He has army green.
I got the battlefield green with the black slide. So
Well, so you do have combat interchangeability. So you have the ability to have the same magazine, same ammunition. Functionality and manipulation is the same. So if you had to grab his gun, there would be no confusion. You know exactly where everything goes. So I think that's a good thing. I mean, one thing you could simply do is take the bottom of the magazine and just write your first initial on it in like silver Sharpie or something like that, and then you know which one you're grabbing.
And I had a Smith & Wesson Shield 9, which we talked about probably, 4 or 5 episodes ago. And
Still in the custody of the Baltimore
it
Police
is
Department.
Still in the,
Why don't you
He
get
loved
that
that
back?
thing.
I know, that gun was great.
He loved it.
And
Why
you
don't
know,
you
and
get
you
it
know what?
back?
And I'll be the first to admit, because I'm guilty of this, is I don't maintenance my weapons that often. Like, I mean, sometimes it's embarrassing when I pull it out of the holster. It has like lint in the trigger.
Yeah, you and Brian are in the same same cleaning cycle
because,
apparently. So I would just add, I would preface that by saying you should be inspecting your gun monthly. You should be blowing those little colonies of dust bunnies out of there and lubricating as necessary. If it looks dry, it is dry, and she likes to be wet. People are going to hate me for that.
Put some Diddy on it.
Apparently, so he's
Don't oil it.
He's cornered the market.
Yeah.
He's cornered the market. Now we do not use, what was he using? Baby
Baby
oil.
oil.
Baby oil.
We do not lubricate guns with
He
baby oil.
shopped at Costco. Leave him alone.
Yeah.
So, but look, you do need to care for the guns. You should be lubricating them because eventually they could fail. And again, we don't want them to fail when we need them to not fail. So, in your life, that might just be the last mistake you make. So, we want to be mindful of that. So,
My favorite Duane and Vinny and G Money is when I come across cases where they have mismatched ammunition
Oh, I see it all the time.
in the magazine.
I've got one better than that. I've seen that. And I took a gun off a guy one time, and he had the rounds. Every other one of them was reversed.
Very effective.
He had a 50% chance of getting it right,
Oh
and
my
he got it
gosh.
wrong.
That's
So
funny. I don't. How did that even happen? Does it even?
I don't even know how you would think that is a thing. Like I don't even know. Maybe somebody was. I can assume maybe somebody was screwing around with him, but that happened.
But going back to what Duane was saying is like, obviously he's like, there may be someone in the state that's carrying a Luger right now. But I was thinking, I'm like, if you follow the Baltimore City Police Department Facebook page, you should see some of the shit that they take off of these guys.
There is. That's my carry gun right there.
Like, I've seen stuff that they
Straight off
like,
the battlefields of World War I.
like, you know, they robbed stagecoaches with back
yes.
in the day.
Yes.
And I'm like, they're Colt hammer action, Billy the Kid style.
So
Taped together.
Yes.
So I took a
Zip tie.
single action. It was like a 44 Magnum, and it wasn't even like one of the Ruger Blackhawks or Redhawks. It was like an off-brand, like a Rossi or something like that. But it was literally a single action, serial number obliterated, of course, years ago. But yeah, you'll see all kind of stuff.
I was like, man, I'm looking at some of these guns and I'm like, that guy is more in danger firing that weapon at someone than he is the other person at the other end of the barrel. Like,
They
Well,
used to
so
have.
Are we talking about like illegal guns?
yeah, like
yeah.
they I guess
that
they,
makes sense.
I guess they would break into like, I don't know, a museum or something because that's where these weapons came from.
Or maybe
And-
some guy's house who like
Yeah.
collected antique guns
And
or something.
they would be out on the street and they'd have like, you know, 5 dime bags of weed laid out on the table and this old like stagecoach robbery revolver with 3 rounds of ammunition in it. And I'm like, and it's like, who's shooting that? Like, I wouldn't squeeze the trigger. I wouldn't stand behind that thing and pull the trigger. There's no way.
I agree.
I mean, well, I feel like a lot of criminals maybe try to use things like that just as for
Prop.
intimidation,
A
kind
prop.
of like the guy who tried to rob us.
Yeah.
That wasn't even a gun. It was like a
It was a
BB
pellet
gun.
Yeah, it was a pellet gun.
So for the gentleman who is watching, whose carry weapon pre-exists 1898, come at us.
So for me, I carry Glocks, and again I like the Glocks. There's plenty of good options out there. I like the SIG 365s as well. But currently, my carry gun is the Glock 43, standard Glock 43, and the Glock 26. For the 43, I've got the regular mag that I then put a +1 extension on it, and for the spare mag, I have a +2 on it because the 43 is a single stack. It only carries 6 and 1 in the pipe. If you add an additional in the mag, you got 7 and 1 in the pipe, then plus the +2 in the 8.
Come on over to the X side, Duane. You get 10 in
Well,
the mag, 1 in the hole.
You do, but the reason I didn't is because the part of the gun that sticks out of your shirt more is the butt of the grip.
And that's my issue with it. So
Yeah.
I am thinking about getting a 43.
So you could do that, or my other advice to you would be look at the SIG 365. My parents actually just got handgun permits, and they got the 365. Now, they got the XL, which is slightly longer on the front and the bottom. So I would stick with the standard 365, but the standard 365, I want to say it holds 10 or 12 rounds in basically the same package as a 43. Like, I don't know how they did it. And it's a dream to shoot. So if I ever, all my Glock lovers, I'm not leaving yet, but if I ever do, it's going to be the 365.
So I have a question. Who taught your parents their class?
Me.
You charged them, didn't you?
Oh, they pay. This isn't a charity.
Time is money.
They pay for all this stuff. So, no, but seriously, they were kind of going down the same path as a lot of our listeners probably and our viewers. What would work? What should I get? And the SIG 365, in my opinion, P365, it's very well made. It's accurate. It's reliable. You get a lot of capacity. It's very concealable. There's a lot of options. The one that they got came with the MOS cut slide. Not that they're ever going to put a optic on it. I don't have optics on mine. It's just one more thing to bump into stuff and take up space on my belt. But I don't do that. But I did tell them, I said put a weapon mounted light. So they're looking at a Streamlight TLR7, and then they're going to get a simple Kydex that'll hold that gun with the light. And they got the one that's got the relief cut. So if for whatever reason they decided to go with an RMR or something like that on the top, that they could still use that holster. So I think that's a great choice. And that's not to say that's the only choice out there. There's lots of really good stuff out there, but those are my thoughts on those three guns. Andrew.
As a refined gentleman of leisure, of course, I have a Walther PPQ.
I thought you were going to say a Walther PPK like James Bond.
Too small for my hands.
Yes.
I would be about it if came in other calibers.
It would look like one of those little G.I. Joe guns in your hand, like one of those little plastic things.
Yeah.
So, no, look, you said the PPQ.
I own a bunch of PDPs too, but I don't have holsters for them.
So
I've been blazy. Now, yes, I said blazy, busy and lazy.
I love the
like
PPQ. I think the PPQ has a fantastic trigger. It's a little bit bigger. It's like a mid-size, kind of like a Glock 19 in size in that zone.
I am a small man after all.
Well, of course.
For those who aren't watching, 6'5", 325. Got a lot of cushion.
I like the PPQ. It's got a great trigger. It's simple. It's accurate. It's fun to shoot. It's comfortable.
17 rounds.
So yeah, I shot the other Andrew's PPQ, and I shot it in its stock form, and then I shot it when he put the Halo Sun on it. It shot great both times. Obviously, it was way better with the Halo Sun. But again, like, I think it's a little too big to carry every day because it's a full-size handgun. It's basically carrying a Glock 17.
Technically a compact, sir, and speak for yourself.
Yeah. So the Holosuns, I was talking to somebody, I think it was today, actually. We were talking about the
Did I
optics.
mispronounce that?
No. I think you're right. I mean, Andrew, is it pronounced? It's pronounced Holosun.
Once again, they will hate on the refined gentleman of leisure, but as a world traveler, hello, son.
Hello, son.
Is that Swedish?
Yes.
Okay.
I just made that up.
I don't know enough about them, but I do know people that have them and seem to really like them. I really like the Trijicon RMR, but that's not the only thing that's out there. But again, I don't put that on my carry gun. That's a duty weapon type thing. But it's great. I mean, I like it for a duty weapon. I don't know that I would put it on a carry gun though. I agree. A concealed carry gun, that is. So what other stuff have people talked to you about? Like,
the number of people that I've encountered in my life that will swear that a 22 caliber is where it's at, because you can have a large number of rounds and they're going to bounce around in the target's head, and they're going to...
Yeah, they watch too many mob movies.
Yes. And the one famous mobster that was killed with a 22, but before he died, he was able to take the bar stool and bludgeon the shooter to death, who, people conveniently ignore that kind of fact.
I mean, look, you've got to have a round that's capable of creating that type of wound, that type of penetration and permanent cavity Okay, so the FBI says you need to have a penetration to a scientifically valid depth. They say that that's 12 to 18 inches. And you also have to have a round that's going to create a large enough permanent cavity to create central nervous system shutdown through rapid blood loss. Because in most cases, you're probably not going to be getting those shots to the level of the cervical spine to cause that immediate incapacitation. Those are going to be like your T-box shots, right? So 22 just, it doesn't do it. And people fool themselves all the time. The 380, same thing. There's been a lot of advancements in the 380 round. It's just not moving fast enough. And in handgun calibers and the velocities that handgun calibers are moving, there is not hydrostatic shock. So hydrostatic shock is...
I was just going to say, Duane,
what is
please
hydrostatic?
enlighten the audience.
What is that?
So hydrostatic shock is going to be when you get hit with like a high velocity round, something that's moving 2,400 feet per second or faster at the point of impact.
What would an example of that be?
An example of that would be like an AR-15, a 5.56 round, a 7.62 39. Really, any of those
22 long rifle.
22 long rifles, not there, not there at all.
This is why G Money carries the AR-15 pistol as her.
In the purse,
Yes.
fanny pack. Look, those rounds, when they hit tissue, because they're moving so fast, they travel literally with like a wake of energy. And when those rounds hit soft tissue, that energy gets dumped into your tissue and it pulverizes that tissue. It's the how a little teeny tiny 5.56 round, which is literally 22.224 in caliber, it's 22 basically, how that can go in and cause a cavernous wound because of that energy dump. Handgun rounds, just they're not moving fast enough. So as an example, okay, your 380 round is going about 830 feet per second, give or take. 38, probably high sevens, 780 feet per second, somewhere in that zone. Maybe you're shooting plus Ps, maybe a little bit more. Your 45, probably 800 feet per second or so, give or take. 40 cal, about 900 feet per second. And your 9 millimeters traveling between 11 and 1,200 feet per second. So it's over the sound barrier. And that extra velocity really is the equalizer. And this is any of our...
Are you pulling out high school physics here, Duane?
No, this is in the FBI's report. So anybody that's watching can go online, they can find the FBI's report, and they can look it up, and they'll see that that's what it says. And they did a lot of studies on this.
And it is high school physics. Yeah. You need the mass, i.e. the weight of the round, and the velocity. That's going to equal the power.
Well, and here's the thing. If you can have a heavy round moving slow, or you can have a light round moving fast, and both can accomplish similar goals, and that 9 millimeter is smoking.
So what about a 22 round? It's neither big nor fast.
Yeah, 22. I mean, that's kind of the problem. It's slower than 9 millimeter, and it's a lot lighter, and the diameter is a lot smaller. And in addition to that, they talk about it bouncing around and stuff like that. And somebody will find it, I'm sure, and they'll put it in the comments that I don't believe there is a 22 caliber round that is commercially marketed as a self-defense round against other human people, right?
I'm sure such a thing exists as a sucker is born every minute. I doubt you will find a police force or legitimate military organization that issues 22 caliber weapons.
No, I agree with you. And so with that said, 9 millimeter rounds and 45 and 40 and all of those basic self-defense caliber rounds, they have companies that make self-defense or law enforcement ammunition for them that are designed specifically to do those certain things inside of the body. And I'm not aware, maybe there is, you're probably right, that maybe there's a 22 out there that's designed for personal protection, but not protecting this guy.
Well, there's probably some guy out there that's like, well, I reload my own 22 in the basement. And I put a little extra of the wacky tobacco in there, put a little hotter round.
This one will, I'm sure, get a number of interesting comments.
Bring it on.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, I've looked at lots of different guns over the course of doing classes. People have brought lots of different stuff in. And some of it I've liked, some of it I haven't liked. I mean, I've had people come through. Jimmy's got it on screen.
The Federal Punch 22.
That's long
What
rifle.
is it? What does it say? So the 22 long rifle cartridge specifically designed for self-defense applications. These two cartridges take a different approach. Federal Punch. Yeah, but defense against for the short barrel length of common concealed carry handguns. So click on that and let's see if they're actually talking about using these against people, because that's crazy. Yeah, it looks like it's an article from, what is this, American Rifleman. Yeah, scroll down a little. See if you see anything where it talks about.
And I
Yeah,
noticed, Duane, you didn't mention the defensive power of the 10 millimeter.
I used to carry a 10 millimeter.
All the fans of the Fallout series love a 10 millimeter.
But before I realized the facts about 9 millimeter, I've carried a number of different things.
They're going to say 40 caliber, just shorter and weaker than the 10 millimeter.
The drawbacks of the 40 caliber outweigh the benefits as opposed to the 9 millimeter.
I'm with you, brother.
What's this say here? Let's see. Yeah, this I mean, look, it's a legitimate source, but this is suspect to me. If you ask me, Duane, should I be carrying a 22 caliber handgun for personal protection against other humans? My answer is going to be absolutely not. See me in the comments. But I'm telling you, that should not be your first choice.
Hey, Duane, so what are some good and some bad alterations you can make to your weapon?
So that's a good question. We see lots of interesting things come through classes. In my opinion, the two main things that you should be doing is adding night sights to your gun, and really request when you buy it if it can come with factory night sights. So night sights are important. Obviously, a lot of shootings happen under diminished light. You need to be able to see your sights, you hope. So that and the addition of a weapon-mounted light, that, in my opinion, is really all that you're going to do. You're going to avoid doing things like adding, as Andrew said in the last video, a hair trigger, or trying to lighten the trigger pull of your gun. If the manufacturer thought that particular gun needed to have a lighter trigger pull, they would have done that from the factory. But when you start doing stuff like that, you can impact its reliability. You can cause breakage. The other thing is, if you have a negligent discharge, or even if you miss and you intended to shoot, but you miss your intended target and you hit somebody else downrange, I can assure you somebody's going to be bringing that up in the courtroom. They're going to have a big picture on the wall with a trigger pound gauge and going to say that this is the factory weight of a gun, of a trigger for this particular model, and this is what this one is, and that's why he missed and hit my client, or something like that.
Now pay me.
Yeah.
And
So
Andrew will have a new car.
Yeah, so then is that worse for the I guess the person
Who's on the defense?
yeah, the defendant. Is that worse for the defendant if they made some kind of alteration in their weapon that made them more dangerous?
I would say so. Again, I would avoid things like altering your trigger pull weight. I would avoid doing things like changing substantive parts of the gun, like chopping off the grip and melting on some other type of grip or something like that. I would certainly avoid things like morale statements. Like, people will buy these things because they look cool, and it'll say, like, on the barrel, it'll say "smile and wait for flash," right? And an attorney's going to eat that up. Like, they're going to say, "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, and your honor, this monster thinks so little of human life, he makes a mockery of shooting and killing my client, or shooting my client."
They could argue that you're trigger happy.
Yeah, they could argue what was your mindset prior to going into this incident overall. Things like putting on the back of Glocks, you'll see that people put the Punisher and Sheepdog and Skulls and Infidel. Please do not do stuff like that, because and Andrew, you can disagree with me or you can agree with me, but I can see that creating problems for you.
So what about having a Tiffany blue gun? Does that look better or worse?
It's unisex. It's unisex. You can
Once
have
again.
Tiffany blue.
But I mean, does it
All right.
seem like less,
So no,
aggressive?
I don't think so. I would say this.
You're just bougie.
No, I would
You have
say
good fashion sense.
look, many guns now come in a lot of different colors. I don't think the color is going to matter, with this exception. If you intentionally colored the gun in an attempt to try to make it look like a toy or something else that could be misconstrued maybe as something else, maybe that would get you in trouble. Andrew?
Let's start pushing back on all these, and let's discuss them, a couple at a time. One of the huge, if everything is correct, and this is a crystal clear, no question about it, case of self-defense, you're in your house at night, the individual breaks in with a crowbar, a mask on, zip ties, duct tape, all of this doesn't
Baby
matter.
oil.
Yeah, baby oil. If it's a perfect shoot, it's a perfect shoot. But unfortunately, life is full of imperfect shoots. one of the factors when you're considering self-defense is who was the primary aggressor and who raised it to the deadly force level. I would certainly, if called upon and necessary, you could impeach the individual who testified to say, oh, no, it was all his fault. Well, why do you have the Punisher on your gun? Who is the Punisher? Explain what he's famous for. Why did you put that there? And a lot of people are not going to be prepared to testify that the Punisher is just my nickname because I'm so nice because I take care of kittens and I hurt people that try to hurt kittens. That's not how it's going to come across. Furthermore, once again, if you are in a situation where it is not exactly a perfect shooting, if you have the hair trigger, that's going to be another explanation. Are you trying to make it easier to shoot and kill people? Are you the aggressor? I'm not saying that you're not going to be able, once again, come at me in the comments. There's going to be some elderly gentleman who was in his house and 3 kids broke in, and because of the arthritis in his hands, he needed a lighter trigger, blah, 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 blah. But for your average person, you need to be very careful because, once again, this is a tool that is designed to deliver a tremendous amount of force. And if you're in a position where you're using that tremendous amount of force, every one of your actions is going to be triple, quadruple Monday morning quarterbacked. And you're going to have a jury, 12 good and true citizens who were too stupid to get off of jury duty, as one of my professors would always say in law school. And it is going to be very difficult for a lot of gun owners who are in a self-defense situation under a withering cross-examination by a prosecutor to explain why you've got infidel written on your firearm if the victim happens to be Muslim. It's going to be very difficult, even if it's a good shoot. It is going to be very difficult to explain why you needed the hair trigger. It's going to be very difficult to why, you've got the Punisher engraved on your barrel. Things like that, after the fact, can make an ugly situation appear even uglier than it actually is.
And in addition to that, back to the original discussion that I said was that it could, when you introduce aftermarket parts that may not have the same quality or fit or finish, you run into situations where they make the gun less reliable. So in addition to all the legal jeopardy you potentially put yourself in, you now have a situation where maybe the parts don't work. And I can tell you, when we've done our defensive handgun 102 classes and stuff like that, we've had people come to classes with guns that are all quote unquote souped up, and they fail and stuff breaks. Even like, for example, there was a guy that had, he had a Glock model 19, and he had Magpul magazines. Magpul makes great magazines, you would think. Their Glock mags broke during this school. So, I'm about, like I said in the last video, keep it OEM and just be careful and thoughtful about what you do and why. Because like Andrew said, every single thing that you do is going to be second guessed. And you're going to be making that explanation. Why does that say smile and wait for flash? And you're going to be sitting there going, because I thought it was funny, right? Well, now it's not so funny.
Yeah, so it's kind of like with anything, OEM equipment is generally going to be the best when it comes to reliability and parts, because if you think about it, Glock or SIG, these are big money companies, and they put millions of dollars into research and development versus a guy in Utah that's got a CNC machine, and he turned out 3 or 4 of these things, and he was like, oh, okay, well, they seem to work. Let's post them on the internet for sale.
They look really cool, though,
They look
Vinny.
really cool. Whether it's flashy, it's anodized, it's engraved, whatever the case may be.
Cerakoted
So
nicely.
it's kind of like what I used to say in the motorcycle business. I was like, listen, Suzuki spent millions of dollars figuring out the geometry of this motorcycle. And here you are buying this $30 cool anodized, we used to call them dog bones, to lower the bike. And you take the millions of dollars of research and development and you throw it right in the trash can when you put that shit on there.
And in that same vein, if you're going to have your gun worked on and have OEM parts installed, the person that's doing that work should be qualified and certified to do it. I'm a certified Glock armor. I can work on Glock guns under the umbrella of Glock. But you don't want to just take it to somebody you know and they just happen to like guns and have them mess with your firearm, whether it's whatever it is. If they do something that creates a problem, one, if you don't realize it before you get into a critical incident, that's a problem for you. And two, well, if you do get into a critical incident and you use the gun and that, whatever it was that was done, creates a legal jeopardy for you, the company, Glock or SIG or whatever, aren't going to be very helpful to you.
I mean, are some of those alterations even legal, like to mess with your gun that way?
Yeah, I mean, it's you, as long as you're not doing something that would make the gun fire in full auto or something like that, you can, I mean, I could take that 1911 right there and cut it in half. Come at me in the comments. I could do whatever I want with it. It's as long as I'm not turning it into a machine gun or somehow violating state or federal law in what I'm doing. But to your point, the only things that I can think of that would make that gun illegal would be to make it full auto, would be to add a non-registered suppressor to it, or to put a buttstock on it and make it an SBR. But yeah, I mean, look, there are so many different types of handguns out there, and there's brands out there that are less expensive, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad. And then there are some that are just plain not good.
Yeah, I mean, my very first handgun was a P95 Ruger. I still own it. I've probably shot the most rounds out of that gun than I did any other weapon that I own, just because it was my first handgun. So I was at the range, and that's back when, ammo was dirt cheap. You were just out there just pumping rounds out. It didn't matter.
Thanks, Joe Biden.
Yeah. So, but
That's Bidenomics.
Bidenomics.
I think Ruger really did their best work with the 1022 and the Mark series of pistols. I think that their semi-automatic carry guns and duty guns fall short. I'm sorry, Ruger, but I'm not a fan of the Mini 14. I've owned a couple of them. There's no, in my mind, if you can have an AR, why wouldn't you have that as opposed to a Mini 14? The price, yeah, I get it. They cost a little bit less, but I think Ruger did their best work with the 1022 and the Mark series pistols. So I had a P89. I had a P89 when I was younger, and that was just, I didn't carry it. It was just to shoot, and I very quickly got rid of it. So what we haven't talked about?
What's that?
Revolvers.
Well, okay.
Who wants to go first on that one?
I'll tell you mine.
Go ahead.
I don't own a revolver, but the only gun in our house growing up was an old 38 Special snub nose, and that was my dad's gun. It was a Colt, and he had bought it because he used to work at the Amico station on Mount Royal in St. Paul downtown next to the train station. And
Beautiful area late at night.
yeah, and even back in whatever the 70s, he's working there, and he's a teenager, and he worked with my uncle, and they would work the overnight shift, and he got robbed one night, and it spooked him.
So look, people come through and they'd say, well, I told my wife, or I told this person or that person, the best gun you can have is a revolver because it'll never jam, and you'll just pull it out and you'll press trigger and you can shoot at 6. The problem with revolvers is they were great early on when semi-automatic handguns weren't quite there yet, because they were reliable. And even then, semi-automatic handguns carried 6, 7, 8 rounds, stuff like that. Nowadays, if you have a revolver, unfortunately, you're undergunned. You're undergunned from a ammunition standpoint. You're undergunned from a round caliber standpoint. And, the reloads in a revolver, and people are like, well, I only need one. Well, that's nonsense. Okay, look, here's the deal. When you are involved in a critical incident, you're going to send it. It's going to be full send, and those rounds are going to come out, and you're probably going to empty that cylinder in that first back and forth. And then what? If you were not effective, or if there's more assailants or whatever, and you need more rounds, now you've got to hopefully be good with that reload. And you better have 1 or 2 of those speed loaders knocking around in your pocket. To me, the benefits are outweighed by the cons with a revolver. And I tell everybody that comes through a class, people say, well, and my mom had this problem. She's like, well, I have a hard time racking the slide. I said, I don't want to hear you can't do it. Find a way to do it. And she started working at it. She got it figured out how, with the technique she needed to do to actually be able to lock slide to the rear and all that. And she's able to do it. And she does it on the SIG 365. So even if somebody has like arthritis or some sort of problem, they have the Easy Slide series that Smith & Wesson does. And the slide pull weight is a lot less, and it's certainly doable by most anybody. The Easy Slide series, I have one. I use them in classes as a demo gun. I have found that the accuracy, I didn't care for it as much. And I also had some mechanical problems with mine, which prompted it going back to Smith & Wesson no less than 2 times. And to be honest with you, the problem only got slightly better. So my experience with it.
That's where I'm going to push back on this one a little bit. There's people we know, but all know here, who have serious hand problems. Make fun of them if you want. Maybe missing a hand. That kind of person, I can understand a revolver. A mutual friend of all of ours, when he had his wrist operated on and he was incapacitated completely with his arm for months, he carried a revolver every day then. It wouldn't be my first choice, but his point was, I can't use my other arm at all, so this is better than nothing.
So I've never shot a revolver, but how does it compare in terms of like kickback?
Well, I mean, it depends on the caliber. Again, your most people are going to be carrying either 38s or 357s, and there is a difference between the two. 38, even with plus P ammunition, the recoil is going to be, I would say, between a 380 and a 9mm, somewhere in that zone, probably. With the plus Ps, maybe more. But when you get into the 357, I mean, you're talking probably the recoil of a 45, or maybe even more.
G. Gordon Liddy, may he rest in peace. He always advocated for certain people go with the 357 loaded with 38.
Yeah, you can do that. You can't do the opposite.
Yeah,
You would want to do the opposite, but you
won't do the opposite more than once.
No, in fact, most of your 38 revolvers, the cylinder is such that you could not. And by the way, that entire case isn't full of powder, but the size of it does prevent you from. It should prevent you from being able to cycle the rounds in the cylinder of 357 in a 38. Although I do believe a friend of ours did it once.
Yes.
So it's I would say that revolvers, if you have to, but not as a primary choice.
If you are a average, able-bodied person, go with a semi-automatic handgun. If you are an outlier with there is no better option, definitely go with a revolver over nothing. That would be my thoughts.
Are revolvers less accurate?
No, I think in a lot of ways, revolvers are probably a little bit more accurate because you have the ability in many cases to pull the hammer back to that single action mode and then get that really nice trigger press, and as opposed to that long, heavy double action pull. But again, the cons outweigh the pros, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's a lot less moving parts on the revolver, so
Until you have to take the side plate off and clean them, then they look like a fine cuckoo clock inside.
yeah, you're like, what's going on in there?
So, I mean, look, back in the day when most people had revolvers, you were evenly matched. But as the criminal element started to get semi-automatic handguns, we see in the 80s and the 90s and moving forward, law enforcement transitioning into semi-automatic handguns just because it was a better option. Again, when things change, things change. And it goes back to the very first thing we talked about at the beginning of this episode is we cannot hold on to things for just mere nostalgia alone. We have to make educated decisions, and we have to stay up with technology. I mean, nobody's carrying a flip phone anymore. Anybody have the StarTAC, the Nextel? Remember?
Excuse me,
Andrew, would you take
I
your
have a
phone
flip
out?
phone.
Would you take your phone out?
Is
for
your
the
flip
audience?
phone from 20 years ago?
No.
Well, how old is it?
It's brand new.
Right, it's new technology.
Yeah,
That's my
yeah.
point. It's not one of the old StarTACs
Is it a
from
smart
19,
flip phone?
Yeah, it's a
97.
it's a Samsung flip phone.
Can you get Siri on there?
Yes,
Ask Siri who's going to win the presidential election.
I do want to know.
He's got that big ass hand, and he's carrying this little flip.
All right, so
phone
hold on.
around.
I want to show you guys something. So you remember at the last episode we were talking about the bolo wrap.
Yeah.
So I actually went through all my stuff and I found some stuff. So I wanted to share it with you guys on this episode. So hang tight. I'll try not to impale myself with this thing. So this is the cartridge,
Mhm.
and we'll get some pictures up, in post so you can see.
Can we
This
shoot
is-
producer Jimmy with it?
You can't. There's no
Okay.
gun, and it's already
Okay.
been fired.
All right.
But this is the
Disappointing.
cartridge, and I stuck the stuff back in there. Now you can take that. Here is what it fires out, by the way, Andrew.
A string.
It is a Kevlar wire with those weighted fish hooks. I told you.
Oh, so they're
And
in there.
yeah, and he'll pass when he's done looking at it. We'll pass it over. You
Okay. So that's in here.
do not get
Yeah.
these stuck in your skin. Here.
Certainly could be, as a term, less
Yeah,
than
it's fish
lethal,
hooks.
but at the
Yeah.
same time, this could leave permanent, lasting injuries on someone. So I would be very careful about applying it unless it was in a true deadly force encounter.
You haven't read all the comments from the last episode yet, have you?
No.
No.
Everybody's saying
Yeah.
we're promoting only shooting and killing people, not
Yes.
using less lethal. They apparently didn't watch the whole video.
Oh,
So
There's
Anyway.
4 hooks on each weighted barb.
yep. Yeah. So
If
that's what that is.
My
If you
eye.
hit-
You know what,
Yeah,
though,
if you-
Dwayne? Any attention is good attention.
Uh-huh.
as long as they're talking about us.
I guess they
Exactly.
didn't. I guess they didn't see the video of the New York City police officers the other day that were trying to detain the man on the platform with the knife, and they actually let him board the train that had civilians on it instead of taking him down on the platform. And they discharged 2 or 3 taser rounds at this guy, unfazed. Did not work, and he was wearing a T-shirt. And they had to end up shooting him.
And the thing is, with that taser, you've got that spread from those 2 prongs. So you might get one, and they have the current ones have 2 lasers, so you can see where both are going to hit. But there's a spread enough that you can hit with one and miss with another. And so there is, unless you've got one of the newer ones that actually you could fire a secondary shot and the 2 talk together. You know, if you don't have that, well, you're not going to get any effect at all because there's no electricity going through because the other prong
yeah,
missed.
because one's a power and one's a ground.
Well, I don't know about the science about it, but I know that you need both of them in there.
It
So-
had-
Forming a circuit, if you
Yeah,
would.
exactly. And your body is part of that circuit.
High school physics,
true.
we're at it all episode long.
physics, you say. So, but at any rate, I thought that was interesting to bring that out. I found that amongst some of my stuff.
Did that get used on you? Is that the one they shot you with?
That was one. They didn't shoot me, but that
Oh.
was one of the ones that of many that was discharged during that demo. And I said to the guy, I said, "Hey, is it okay if I pick this up and take it?" He says, "Yeah, absolutely."
Is that CO2 propelled? Is that what that shoots that thing out? CO2.
I want to say, let's look and see. Actually, no, that's a cartridge.
Oh, it's like
Look at the back of it.
Yeah, that's like
So
a,
so
it's a
technically,
primer.
that's almost like a firearm. That is a firearm. It's using a charge to fire projectiles.
You can see where
It
the
is
pin
a
hit.
propellant. Yes,
You can see where
that
the
is a
pin hit.
firearm.
I mean, you look at it and tell me if you think I'm wrong.
No,
but-
that's it. That's a primer.
So really think this
Oh,
through.
you see it?
Yes. So if you use this improperly, and if you had an aggressive assistant state's attorney, you've used a firearm in a crime of violence and carries a mandatory minimum of 5 years.
You
But
might as well
Andrew-
use a gun.
But Andrew, you're actually promoting shooting someone instead of using less lethal options.
What you're saying?
You're a monster.
What you're saying is I could have stole filet mignon instead of the cereal, and I would have got the same charge.
Yes.
You just
Yes.
You just got to stick the crab meat far enough down your pants that nobody sees it, and it's got to be less than
Gotta
$1,000.
put it in your man wallet.
Yes, the man's ear.
Yeah. Okay.
Your fanny pack.
Yeah, your fanny
You can
pack.
put in your fanny
Yeah,
pack.
right next to your pistol.
1911. All right. So for the wrap up,
Yeah, I would say for anyone who is just getting or thinking about getting a carry permit that may own handguns that they shoot or use for home defense, but if you're just now getting into concealed carry or you just took your course, I would suggest that you would go to a reputable range/gun shop and rent a few pistols. Take them out, cycle 50 rounds through each of them, see how you like it, see how it feels. I'm not sure if they'll actually let you holster it there, because that's a big factor too for me, is like, how does it feel in the holster on my body. But for instance, like my Glock 43X, I love it. I got night sights on it. It's very comfortable to wear. But first time I took it out, I fired 50 rounds through it, and I had a blister on my pad of my finger. And I was like, man, this trigger is really rough. It sucks. But then I'm thinking, there's never going to be a situation where I use this weapon where I need to fire 50 rounds. Hopefully.
Never say never.
Yeah.
Well, and look, that's exactly right. What works for me or works for us may not work for you. There's lots of good stuff out there, but certainly going to a range and trying things out to see what fits in your hand, rack and the slide. Are the buttons in a place where you're not hitting them with your thumbs when you've got that high thumb hold? All those little factors that are going to be very personal. It's going to be a very personal choice. But you're absolutely right.
No, I agree with that because I should have done that instead of just getting the same one he got. Because I would have picked something smaller, lighter,
She
more
wants
discreet.
She wants like a pocket rocket.
No, I want something like
That's a different podcast,
I want something
sir.
like your Smith and Wesson that got taken away. That was small.
It's the same size.
It was
as the 43.
smaller.
No, it's
It
not.
was smaller.
No, it's not. It is not.
Whatever.
Couples
Or
counseling.
I would have at least gotten the 43.
So that brings up a very good point. So it should be small enough that you want to carry it. But the other thing is a lot of people will look at guns and we'll have, ladies will go into the gun stores and they'll have a Glock 17 and then next to it they'll have a Glock 43 and they go, oh, the 43, that's so cute. That'll be perfect because it's nice and small. It shouldn't recoil so much, not realizing it's the same caliber, right? So the situation being that more mass has more control. So the bigger gun, less recoil, more control, smaller gun, less mass, less control, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Physics for the third time tonight.
We're gonna have to wear lab coats next time.
Well, I'm just
That'll be
thinking
the
of
Halloween
like,
episode.
Yeah.
functionality, reliability, and practicality. Like, how practical is it to carry?
Well, you're hitting the nail on the head right here. This is an individual choice.
Exactly.
So for the wrap up, Andrew.
Which gun to carry is really a personalized, individualized decision. We've laid out the factors that one should consider. You've heard from all of us. We all have different body shapes, types, height, weight, and you have to apply the factors to your individual circumstances. Try multiple guns and find the one that works best for you. And at the end of the day, the gun you have with you is worth more than any gun at home in a safe, locked away. You need something that you can have every day under most circumstances to protect yourself and your loved ones.
So for the Urban Defense Podcast, I'm Duane Urban along with Andrew Saller, Vinny Noto, and Gevenny Gamboa. Remember, knowledge is mental ammunition, and train, fight, and win.